Hey everyone, Tony Bacigalupo from New Work Cities here, and I'm really excited to share with you something I've been working on for a long time. It is a co-working space business model template. I'm going to walk you through a bunch of the details of how this template works, but if you're considering opening a co-working space, my plan here is just to offer you something that could save you a whole bunch of time. There's a free version of the template, which should be able to be super valuable to you on its own. And then if you're interested and you have the means, I've got a premium package that should be able to help you so much more. So without further ado, let's dive into the template and get to work. Okay, so we're in the co-working space business model template dynamic version. This is the premium version of the business model template. And we've got, as you can see down here, three different sheets in this particular one. Right here in the beginning, we've got the introduction, just a little bit of a opening into how this works. And the first thing you're going to want to do when you get access to the spreadsheet is to make a copy of it. The version that I'm sharing with you is one that you can't edit yourself, so it stays the same for everyone who gets it. And you're just going to go over to File and make a copy in order to make one that's editable for yourself. You'll also notice in the next note here that you want to be able to read the notes in the different cells in the main sheet that you'll be looking at. So as you can see here, this little note has popped up. That's where you're going to be able to get a lot of helpful information about my thought process and the way that the formulas are calculated in the actual sheet itself. Going over to the capacity sheet, that's going to be the next sheet we're going to look at. Just to give you a little bit of the instructions, I'm going to walk through that with you myself. And then, so you know, once you're in there, the actual numbers that are black are editable, whereas the colored ones are going to be ones that you're not going to want to mess with. So let's get right into the actual sheets themselves. First up, we've got the capacity calculator, and this is where you're going to put in the size of the space that you have in mind. And this is going to feed through into the next sheet as well. So I have this originally programmed for 5,000 square feet. That was the size of the space I ran in New York. I could, for example, say, let's say we're going to have 15,000 square feet. Now, of course, you might not know what size space you are going to have, but you could get an idea based on this of what the numbers would look like at different square footage sizes. So what we're doing here is you're putting in the square footage that you're going to have, and then using some magic, I'm calculating basically what your total capacity is going to be. So down here at the bottom, what you're seeing here is essentially what the allocation is based on the numbers as they've been calculated so far. So for example, if we're assuming a dedicated desk takes up about 30 feet, that's about 5 feet by 6 feet, including a little bit of room for some space, hallway space, that kind of thing. Then you could change these numbers if you want, but this is basically the basic assumption that I've been making here. And so then this is all going to feed through into the business model later, as you'll see sort of the total capacity of your space is based off of these numbers. So you can get a sense of, all right, we're definitely way over budget right now, just based on some numbers that were in there from the past project that I did, so we can start knocking these numbers down. And you see that this number starts to go down here. So I'm just going to do a quick reduction of, oh yeah, we have 50 small offices here, so that's obviously going to be an issue for our capacity. So let's just say we're going to knock all this down. All right, now we're under our 100%, so should be able to make some room for some more things here and there. And you can get kind of a vibe for where you think your best balance is going to be. All right, so we're up to 99%. We've got room for 75 dedicated desks, 20 hot desks. Let's make that like, there we go. 50 dedicated desks, 40 hot desks, 20 communal tables, 15 small offices, 10 medium offices, 5 large offices, a few phone rooms and medium and large conference rooms. And this is calculated based on percentage of your total space. So this is where you can get a little bit of a sense of how tight you're going to pack the space. I'm keeping this at 25%. You could adjust this if you have a better sense of what that might work out to be in your floor plan, depending on the size of your space. Larger spaces tend to have a little bit higher percentage of space allocated for non-desk space. But again, you might just want to kind of run this by your architect or get a vibe for it when you're looking at a particular layout. And I'm just allocating 100 square feet for a kitchen. Again, you could change, for example, if you have a larger space, whatever, you might want to just change the number of kitchens, that kind of thing. So now we've got a pretty good vibe for about the size of the space that we're going to have and how many of the different spots that we can offer. Of course, if you want to have a more office-heavy space, you could allocate that here. If you want to have one that has no private offices, you could allocate all of it up here. So totally flexible, entirely about how you want to do it. And of course, you can make whatever customizations you want in your own version of it. Onward to the main sheet, the third one here, income and expenses. And this is where you're going to have a chance to plug in some more of the variables in your project and get a sense of how all these numbers are going to work out for you. So this number is pulled over from the previous one, so you can see it's been updated to 15,000. And now we get to add what is your monthly rent going to be. So whatever your rent is going to be for this space, let's say for your 15,000 square foot space, let's keep it at 30,000, see how those numbers work out. Then you're at $24 a square foot. Capital cost per square foot. Now this is a very rough way of estimating how much you're going to spend on your initial capital costs, your furnishings and your equipment, your telecommunications, those kinds of things. And this is kind of an industry standard. It's been determined by folks who've been in this world for a while. And what I'm doing here is I'm basically saying for every square foot of your space, you're probably going to spend about $20. That includes all the stuff, carpeting, flooring, chairs, that kind of stuff. So if you want to be more conservative, you think you're going to be doing more lightweight, IKEA, secondhand, that kind of thing, you could take this down to 15 or even lower. And for a higher end build, you want to up it to maybe 30. So if you're trying to kind of compete on that high end office suite kind of level, you might want to up this to 30. Otherwise, you could keep it at 20 for kind of a safe middle of the road. I definitely, with mine, went super DIY, and we were probably below $15 a square foot. I can tell you actually that it was definitely a little bit below that. But for your project, we're just going to try to get a rough idea so you have an idea of what that initial capital cost is going to be. And then I just kind of did a really super rough calculation here of what your initial cash investment is, which is basically what your capital costs are plus another basically 50% to be able to have some extra room for whatever other expenses you're going to have. Now, none of this covers what your lease situation is going to be. So, of course, you have to account for not just your rent. Your rent is accounted for in here, but your deposit, you will have to come up with a fairly substantial deposit. So you'll want to factor that into your numbers here as well. Then getting into the rest of the sheet, you're seeing here that the first section after you've set your variables is income. And this is where we're going to be able to play with how much money you're going to actually end up making. Now here we get a chance to set some more variables. This is where your membership rates are going to show up. So for a dedicated desk, I just put in very lightweight rule of thumb numbers based on some experiences I've had. Dedicated desk, $500 a month. Hot desk, $250. Part-time, I've got this at 30. This is for like a really lightweight part-time membership. And then for a day pass, you could pay $30. So this is kind of based on real life numbers that I've seen in New York and in other places. And then what we're doing here is we're assuming that you're hitting capacity in a year. And these are calculated. You can see that the numbers are colored blue. But what you can do is you can adjust this if you want to be more or less aggressive about how quickly you expect you're going to be able to achieve these numbers. But what we're essentially doing is we're taking these numbers from the capacity sheet and we're saying that by month 12 we hit them. And so for each of these are all coming from that previous sheet and they're being fed through. And then we're basically scaling that back, saying you're at 95%, you're at 90%, 85, and so on. And assuming that you're going to open around just under half of your capacity. So again, you can totally change up these numbers, but I'm just trying to give you, in the beginning, an idea of what your income will be at different ranges of capacity from just under half to all the way full. And so this is going to feed through to all the different membership numbers, and you can see here that down here we've got the net member increase and then the net income increase each month that you are open, assuming that you have this super steady income stream. And then your total number of members, which is calculated by the number of members that you've got signed up here. And then your total membership income, which is the total of all these incomes. So based on this, you've got 50 members and they're bringing in just under $17,000 in your first month. This is based on kind of your medium to conservative estimate. Now we're assuming you've got private offices, and that again, these are all calculated from the previous sheet. So you've got 25 or so offices available, and that in the beginning you've leased out about 14 of them, and that they are generating pretty substantial amount of income for you. Again, these are going to be based on the numbers in the previous sheet, and this is where also you can set the rates for this as well. Moving on to sponsorships, you're going to have potentially an opportunity for annual or regular sponsors for the different kinds of programming that you have, or a sponsor for the organization itself. And so again, in my notes, you can see a little bit about what I'm saying here, that essentially you could be having sponsors, you could have no sponsors. I'm assuming that you're going to be able to secure just a few sponsors, a $20,000 sort of institutional annual sponsor, and then maybe some programming partners for about 10 grand each. And then maybe you're able to add another one down the line. So I'm just assuming that you might be able to raise around 50 grand in sponsorship. Again, this number could be zero, it could be 200,000. It's really a matter of what you want to focus your energy on. But I'm kind of giving you a little taste of a few different things here so you get an idea of how that works. For events, this is where you could, again, have a huge revenue stream, or you could have very, very little. And in this case, I'm just kind of splitting the difference and saying that you're going to have a variety of different kinds of programs, internal ones, maybe some educational programming that you're able to do with a partner organization or with a member who wants to work with you on this kind of thing, and then straight up external event rentals. These are the kinds of things, by the way, with the event rental, I have a event rate card template as part of the premium package as well. So if you've got that, you can ask me about it. And so again, in this case, you get to set the rate that you would charge for these different kinds of programs and the number of events per month that you expect to have. So I'm assuming you've got 2 per month of this, 2 per month of this, and 2 a week, 2 a week of these, and then a couple of times a month you have an external event rental. These are all super rough, but just to give you kind of an idea of what kind of income you could generate if an event space was an important part of your income model. So you can take a piece of each of these and get a sense of what your overall income picture could look like. You may not use all of these. You may use other income streams that aren't on here. But again, I'm just kind of giving you a general vibe for how all of these things might be able to help you out. And then we have our final income numbers. And so you can see here that based on all the things we talked about, and thanks in no small part to those lovely sponsorships that we imagine that we're getting, you're able to generate $100,000 in that first month, and then grow steadily up to kind of your capacity number here. Now on to expenses, and this is where we get to do a little bit of math on the staffing that you're going to have. So with staff, I'm doing a little bit of wicked magic here, and of course you need to be able to change what the salary is and all of that. So, again, we're just getting a really rough vibe here to be able to give you a sense of what's viable. But I'm estimating you're going to need someone at a director level, whether it's you or someone you hire, at around this level per 10,000 square feet. So since we're under 20, you've got one person at this level, and this is kind of the numbers that you've got to pay that person. And then for a space manager or community manager, again, I'm just kind of roughly estimating $3,000 salary per 5,000 square feet. You can change these numbers here. So if you go into line 81, line 77, double click, you can change the salaries. Oh, I'm sorry. This is where we're actually calculating the number of employees per square feet. I'm not going to mess this up. And then the way that we calculate the salary is, oh yes, right, because we're using this number to determine a salary. So you could change the salary here if you want. And you know what? I'm actually going to make these black because they're supposed to be. So there you go. Doing it live right here with you guys, making this document a little bit better every time I look at it. Okay, so now we can see that this is calculated, but again, you could manually change these numbers if you really want to. And then you get your total for how much you're going to have to pay each of these employees. I also just threw in a line for an accountant. Again, you could throw in lines for other staff if you're going to have them, but just to give you a vibe. Now for your rent is calculated from the number above. Your insurance is calculated essentially as a rough estimation of what your rent is. You'll have to talk to a professional to find out exactly what your insurance is going to be. That can vary very widely. Internet, electricity, all of these things are being calculated in really funky ways so that depending on the size of your space, you can get a rough idea of how much you're going to have to spend. This is where I'm trying to do my best to accommodate for the wide variety of different sizes of spaces that you might be considering. So definitely take this with a grain of salt, but I've tested this at various space sizes and it tends to work pretty well. So you should be able to get a pretty good rough ballpark idea of what your expenses are going to look like here. And down here, I just added a few bits of software numbers that were just based on real numbers that we used in our own space. I'm not sure why Pandora's $49 a month. It should be a year, so I'm just going to fix that. There you go. Awesome. Fixed. Noun project is awesome for your graphic creation needs, so I'm keeping that in there for you, but feel free to change all these out as you see fit. Then down to marketing. All of this, again, is totally up to you, but I'm just assuming you're going to be doing some kind of paid search advertising of some kind over the course of this time. You might elect to do some sponsorships of some local groups in your area, and you're probably going to need some print media, t-shirts, flyers, that kind of thing to get you started. And then I just kind of put in a spot. This is really totally just a placeholder, but I just added a spot for you to add some debt service in case there's any of those that you have to be paying off. And then right here, you see, we got total expenses, and we know that we brought in over 100, so we're actually doing okay there. However, because it is our first month, we do have to include those capital costs, so you are going to take that hit on that first month, and we're just totaling everything up here. But because we made that, I'm just going to scroll up, made that initial cash investment, we're going to still have money in the bank, even though we had to spend a bunch in that first month. So now we get to move on to the subsequent months, and what I'm essentially doing is making it so that you are in the black right from the second month onward as far as your memberships and your office rentals are concerned. So again, there's going to be a little bit of magic involved in the numbers here, but make these adjustments, get a vibe for it, and you should be able to see that you do have a plausible path to a profitable business for the future. So we get to column N, and this is where we total up all the numbers for the year. This is your year one totals, and you can see whether or not you're going to have a viable business. In this case, you've got a you got a company that's making more money. And then what I'm doing here is calculating out just for years 2 through 10. Again, these are kind of placeholders, and you can change the vibe of this over time. But I'm making some adjustments to the numbers up here where I'm assuming that you are ramping up event programming substantially, for example, and perhaps that you're able to secure some additional sponsors. And so that's the gist of it. Your membership's already at capacity, your space rental's already at capacity, so you can kind of get a vibe for what it would look like perhaps if you change those membership rates and what that would look like. So this should be able to give you a vibe for what your numbers could look like over the course of time. And that's the gist of it. So by having a look at this, messing with the spreadsheet, hack it up, fix it up, do whatever you want to do to be able to make these numbers feel good to you. You should be able to have a really good idea of whether or not your project is viable at various sizes and price points. And again, these are going to vary widely, but the main thing that you want to be able to figure out here is just the size of your space, the cost of it, and then is this model going to be able to work with the distribution of shared space memberships and offices and other revenue streams that you plan to have. And if the numbers don't work out, then that tells you at least that you're not on the right track. You need to make some adjustments. If they do work out, then they tell you that maybe you are on the right track and that you do have at least a viable plan that could work. And so that gives you a pretty good sense of kind of where your numbers are. So I hope this has been super helpful. Please feel free to shoot me an email if you have any questions. Tony@nwc.co, again, Tony @nwc.co. And I would love to just see how it all goes for you, any questions you have, if you notice any issues. And as I mentioned, I'm constantly working to improve this, so this sheet will be getting better and better as we go. So hope this was useful to you. Best of luck building your co-working space, and just know that I'm here to help you out. So excited to see how we can help you to build a successful community in your area.